Hello everybody. Thanks for joining us for this conversation today. I am Ryan West, President and CEO of West Music. Hi there. And I'm joined by three other wonderful people. We're going to talk a little bit about keyboarding in the classroom. This is a continuation of a conversation we started in this year's, the 2023-24 school year catalog about keyboarding in the classroom. And we're joined by two of our great priority partners, Anthony Patterson from Casio, as well as Mark Amentt from Casio. And then, of course, Kathleen Staten from Music Constructed, who's going to be helping guide this conversation, as well as many of the other conversations we have on an ongoing basis about continuing ed. So I'll let everyone else say hello and add a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I'm the manager of Music Constructed, which is the music educators' home here at West Music.
I'm Anthony Patterson. I'm the educational consultant for Casio America Musical Instruments. My background is as an educator and composer and performer and pianist.
And Anthony, where are you teaching right now?
Well, right now, I teach at the Bayview Music Festival in the summer, where I'm the composer in residence, and I'm the music minister there as well.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Mark Amentt. I'm the director of sales at Casio America. Been with the company for 13 years. But the reason why I got into the music industry and the reason why I love working at Casio is that I've been a musician all my life. And I am a bass player. Don't hold it against me. I can play keyboards a little bit. It's usually just the white keys because it's easier. But I did read the Dizzy Gillespie book where he said that if you really want to understand music and jazz, learn how to play the piano. So there you have it.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for joining us. I don't know if it's easier on the white keys versus the black keys, but I've got two small children and they start on the black keys. So there you go. I don't know. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to have about a half hour, 40-minute conversation, a little bit about keyboarding in the classroom. Just an invitation for everyone who's watching here today. If you've got any thoughts or ideas or questions of anything we covered today, go ahead and post it in the comments down below. We're hoping that this is the beginning of an ongoing series of conversations because we recognize that there's a lot of opportunity for us to explore further with keyboarding in the classroom and some of the ideas around it, as well as curriculum. So why are we having this conversation today? Well, I kind of just alluded to that, but in addition to that, September is International Piano Month. So we thought, why not? Why not get together here as we're kicking off the school year? And I know many folks are getting ready to plan their curriculum for the year, whether they're doing piano in September or maybe in second semester. And we hope that this can serve as a resource and this conversation can be a jumping off point for many of you that are thinking about this for your classroom. As I mentioned before, we've had a long-term relationship working with Casio over the years on some fantastic partnerships all over the country. We've had a chance to partner together on the Save the Music Foundation and working and getting great quality classroom products into schools. As Anthony mentioned, Casio has a great EDU division that he helps lead and guide, and with where our dedication and focus to music education, that's always there. And then, of course, just the desire and the needs from teachers in the classroom. The Casio product continues to come up because it's always a great fit. We're going to kind of start with some of the basics here with folks that are just thinking about getting started with keyboarding in the classroom. And I think Anthony or Kathleen, anybody wants to jump in here. What are the common challenges you see with teachers face when bringing keyboarding into the classroom?
Both my wife and I started at a very early age. And the reason why we were allowed to start at an early age is because of our attention spans. The teachers were checking to see how long our attention spans were and whether or not we would be able to sustain at an early age lessons. I think that is fundamentally the goal, the problem, the challenge, but you're trying to create an atmosphere of learning. You're trying to create that situation where everybody in the class is kind of working together toward the whole thing. And that is the cool thing about piano classes, where everybody has their own instrument and they all sit down and you can get them working as a community toward this music thing.
Yeah, I love that. The piano creates instant engagement. They had pianos that they put all over New York, or if you see a piano in a subway station, people just go up and touch it. There's something so inviting about it, which is something that teachers can definitely leverage. What we hear from our teachers and what I've experienced in the classroom myself is just the how do you make it possible factor. The kids and students all want to engage, but how do you deal with that when you've got one, large classes of children, two, you only see them once a week, so you're trying to keep that engagement and the skills that you build. Three, it's only a 6-week unit. So what do you do with those pianos the rest of the time? There are some definite challenges, including not a lot of curriculum that supports that sort of incremental learning in the classroom. But I hear those are some of the challenges that we're going to help overcome today.
I hope so. We'll see. Yeah. Curriculum is definitely a challenge. And I think that to your point, or for both your points, I love the fact, Anthony, you brought up, and Kathleen, that familiarity with the piano. I mean, it does something that it's an instrument that many of us, though not everyone has maybe a piano or a keyboard at home, it's very inviting. People do want to kind of touch and interact and feel with it. There's a lot of other instruments out there that don't have that same level of engagement, or people feeling like, oh, I can go do that, so I can kind of go pound on it. And we've all seen a small child go to a keyboard and just be like, oh, I just kind of pound on it and it responds to me right away. That's great. Well, I mean, Anthony, you had started talking a little bit about focus. And so what are some of the ways that you see, or what are some techniques you've seen in piano pedagogy when it comes to helping teachers or students find that focus?
Well, you give them challenges, increasing challenges that are easy to master right away. And you do that repetition that brings them back to we're trying to do this, we're trying to do this, and you have an organized plan. Suzuki does this really well. They really, really do. You've got to have things that are interesting. You've got to have things that are bright. So here it is, and that just looks like fun.
How many different colors do those keyboards come in, Anthony?
3, red, black, and white.
As elementary educators, we orient everything towards the xylophone and the boom whackers that match. And that's an integral part of teaching music to the students. So if you could do the same thing, or as Anthony and Mark were talking about, even breaking apart, okay, the red keyboards, you're going to do this Bourdon or this ostinato, and the green keyboards are going to do this piece. It's very akin to leveling the different voices in an Orff ensemble. So what a great way to visually identify for your students what part they're meant to play.
I love that idea, and I think I hadn't thought a lot about how applying Orff ideas and Orff concepts into the keyboarding classroom. I think that's a really interesting jumping off point, and using some of the same techniques and methods that a lot of teachers are used to using in Orff is saying, well, how could I apply that or translate that over to the keyboard? One of the tricky parts with all these keyboards is they have all these sounds, these exciting sounds and noises to work with. So how do you keep that in check, or how do you approach a classroom when you've got a certain amount of time? The first thing they want to do is they want to turn them on, and then they want to start just going through all the sounds. What do you do about that, Anthony, or what's your advice or recommendation?
What I think and what I've heard is you start with the petting zoo. What we were talking about before, everybody comes in and tries the instruments. You let them go as far as they can, and then that's the first 1, maybe 2 classes. I think that all of these things, are ways to create enthusiasm and this feeling of we're really doing something. I mean, we kind of get that when we play an orchestra or a band. We really do. I mean, I did. And I haven't seen the analogy for keyboards in this way yet, but I think it's there. I think it's really exciting, actually. And
Anthony, I think so too. It unlocks that personalized timbre connection, You play the flute because you like the sound. You play the trombone because you like the sound. And students are drawn to that creativity and the different input, right? So if you can personalize your interaction with the keyboard and you're not stuck with boring piano mode, right? I say that from the 7-year-old perspective. I think, again, that's engagement. And as a music teacher, you're talking about timbre, you're talking about range, you're talking about really foundational music concepts that you need to check off your list as well.
Exactly.
I think one of the items you touched on when we talked before was, and I hadn't thought of this of using the keyboard not just as that keyboard instrument, but that exploring the alternate instrumentation or even the drum set or some of the drum sound effects. And so when we talk about using keyboard, it's oftentimes thinking about, okay, we're going to learn a scale, we're going to learn where C is, we're going to go up, the major scales or something like that, but saying, well, let's actually go explore those other tones. That sometimes those sounds are like, it's the distraction. We're like, okay, everyone's on the drum set, I need you to focus on doing keyboard. But instead of trying to get them focused, actually embracing it and saying, okay, cool. We talked about a little bit the different color keyboards and saying, okay, all the red keyboards, you're going to be doing the percussive stuff, and all the white keyboards, you're going to be doing the melody line, and all the black keyboards, you're going to be doing maybe the bass line or something. So, and a bass line actually is a good way for me to transition and bring Mark a little bit into this conversation, the bassist here. So, Mark, one of the things that Kathleen, you had touched on was with one of the challenges of bringing keyboarding into the classroom is that you are trying to bring a bunch of students into a class, you're trying to get a bunch of people to participate, et cetera. What can you talk a little bit about how Casio and how you've approached kind of the design and the development of those products and how they really relate to the classroom needs?
So the design of the products, first of all, they're affordable and they're feature rich, and that is specifically by design. The history of Casio is such that, and the reason why Casio came out with those really little keyboards way back when was because the Casio brothers, which they are the founders of Casio, felt that music should be for the masses. That was the whole idea. Anybody and everybody should be able to access music and be able to play. So that's how it started. That was the whole genesis of how Casio came to be. People think about, calculators with Casio and things like that, but really the integration of music in that, it was felt that that's a more fulfilling life if you have music in your life. And I agree with that 100%. But because the products are feature rich, because the products are affordable, it's a value proposition. And especially in today's economy with classrooms getting, budgets cut and things like that, these are affordable. But it serves the needs of everybody from, the elementary to the middle school, high school, then college, and then beyond. So it's something for everybody as it goes along. The other idea was to make it fun. Fun fact from Casio, the SK1. Anybody ever hear of that? The SK1 was the first sampling keyboard that was ever made. The fun of it was that you could press a button, say something, and it would repeat it back to you. Oddly enough, I have one in the other room. I should get it. It's in my daughter's room. But anyway, and it's still the one that I bought however many years ago. But it was because it was fun. So the idea is just like we're talking about now, and I love hearing the discussions about, well, you play this, you play that. That's like orchestration 101, for elementary kids. But the concept is that you have all these different sounds in there. You have all these different components that just make music fun. I mean, why did we all get into music? Did we want to sit there and learn the scales like all day long? No, we did it because it would be fun. There becomes a social component of it, which is really important. So when Casio designed the keyboards, there were all of those things in mind: the colors, the portability, and all of our keyboards, except for the Grand Hybrids, which weigh about 300 pounds, they all run on batteries. So you can take them anywhere. So in that classroom picture that Anthony showed, you don't see any wires, even though we do include with the keyboards the power supply. They can run on batteries. So the thing that I liked about coming to Casio was the feature-rich product, the idea that music could be accessible to everybody, the concept that music can be for everybody. When we started working more deeply into education, we discovered that it was a perfect fit, because of all those things. So it's a fun place for me to be. I mean, I came from another industry, and it's funny because I talk to people now, and I worked in the publishing and pharmaceutical industries, but I've been a musician all my life. And music to this day, with my gray hair and old age, I still love to play music. So, I mean, that's what it's about. We're all trying to expose people to music.
Mark mentioned it, and I think we've had the opportunity to work with Casio on a number of really fantastic products that are really great for the classroom. So if you're thinking about like, okay, where do I start with keyboarding, or what are the products I should be thinking about? I know one of the things that Mark, you mentioned was the budget sometimes doesn't allow for a lot. And I think one thing we've always really tried to do is how do we make the budget go a little bit further? How can we get more instruments in more students' hands? So you guys have the SA81. It's a smaller, it's kind of the mini keyboard. It's got like 44 keys, but it's like under $100. And so one of the things I love about that is that we've seen classrooms outfit for a whole classroom, so every kid can have a keyboard. And that's a good place to get started, but it's definitely not the only solution to go along the way. One of the ones that we see a lot of popularity is the CTS 200. It's multicolored. It's got like the red, the black, and the white, but it also has that built-in handle. And the other thing I really love about those products is the ability to use batteries, because it really does remove that wires of the classroom. It's a common thing that you do need to think about if you're going to be bringing keyboarding in the classroom. It's like, what's the environment going to be set up? And I think many of us are used to like, well, I got to have desks everywhere. I got to work with the janitorial staff or the service facility staff to try to get power to every single desk. And the ability to say, well, you could throw batteries in it and it can be on the floor like Anthony's picture showed, or you can have a little bit more of a flexible environment in your classroom. I know when I was growing up doing keyboarding in the classroom, it was like we were all kind of wired together and everything had to be all plugged in, and you guys have done a great job really adding in some more of that flexibility. There is, of course, the ways to add in more of the technology, the lab systems and controllers, et cetera, which we'll talk about. But I wanted to mention those, and then they go up from there. I mean, some of the other cool things that I know you guys can do. You've got the models with the light up keys, which really is another fun way to add in some interactivity, et cetera. Those are the LK series, the LK 250s and 450s. And then we talk about sampling and great audio samples. You can go up to there to like the CTS1, another really great product. And there's way more than that. We can go up into digital pianos, et cetera. But I wanted to mention a couple of those. So people, if you're like, well, where do I start? What product should I be looking at? I think those are some really great ones to look at for your classroom. And of course, check out the catalog or the website. You can see the whole range and the whole selection. But I wanted to point those out because we've seen those as really successful entry points. Let's talk a little bit about the technology stuff. We touched on wireless connectivity, et cetera. Anthony, in terms of lab systems, et cetera, oftentimes, like I said, my experience with labs is like the stuff I was all used to kind of growing up, and it's been a while since I've looked at the lab system. What are you seeing out there for folks that are having success with lab, or do you have any recommendations of things to think about when you want to do a keyboard lab versus maybe that individual composition stuff we touched on?
We have a system that we've used and has worked really well for us, the GEC system. This is
That's the Korg GEC system. Yeah,
exactly.
Just making sure everybody knows what the GEC system is. Yeah.
Yeah. So this makes sure that it has to just work. You have to be able to communicate effortlessly with everyone in the class, and you can walk around as the teacher with an iPad or an Android equivalent and control everyone in the class and be able to pair groups, have groups work together. One of the great things about our Privia line and Selviano line is that you can split the keys into two separate pianos. So you have two, I would imagine it's 44 note keyboards, each with their own middle C. And if you have the 3-pedal adapter, you have 2 sustain pedals. I love that. And it adds to the element of communal performing.
So in terms of adding some of the technology in, you mentioned the Korg system. It allows them to use like a tablet. The students then have their own kind of headsets with
there's
microphones.
Right, there's a teacher station, and there's a box that fits on every keyboard, and every keyboard has 2 outputs or 2 output inputs for mic and headphones. Each one could be, you can use the pianos in duet mode. They all connect with Ethernet Cat5, and I mean, it does involve an installation, but once it's installed, it just works.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing.
Well, and I know that actually is a interesting point, because you're adding in the technology piece, and you mentioned you need to do some Ethernet. You kind of maybe need to include the IT department or AV department.
You do.
And actually, the nice thing about this one that I had totally glossed over before is that because it's technology funds, oftentimes that's a different budget than the music classroom funds. And so partnering with your IT AV staff to get the things, the necessary tools and resources together to get that going is a fantastic way to do it. The other thing that you guys have just started doing more recently with connectivity, because of whether it's these one device classrooms, et cetera, is you guys have also started adding in some wireless MIDI stuff. So instead of having to have all the MIDI boxes, you also have some Bluetooth MIDI things, right? You want to
Yes.
speak, you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, the WUBTO1. I have the number.
Okay, there
ready.
you go. The WUBTO1. Thank you. Okay. So what is that all about? Because that's another way that students can interact with technology in the classroom that's maybe even more flexible than a lab system.
So when maybe we should just talk for a second about MIDI and what it is. MIDI is musical instrument digital interface. It was a way in the beginning to have one keyboard connect to another keyboard, and so you could play one note on one and it would play a note on the other instrument. What it evolved into mainly was keyboards and computers and digital audio workstations. Now, what is so incredibly cool about having MIDI, Bluetooth MIDI on your keyboard is you can connect to your phone or your iPad or Android device. We have an app called Music Spaces that is just wonderful.
Well, I think the nice thing about it is everyone kind of goes in the classroom like, okay, we're going to get started. We got to get everyone focused here. And then we got to technically troubleshoot all the wires and the cables. And I think with the idea of student-based composition, or them being able to do their own recordings and stuff like that, I just think that's such a cool way to do it. Spend less time trying to navigate the product, the technology, and more time making the music together. So cool.
Well, it's a great way. All of our instruments, all of the Casio tones and the Privias and Selvianos, all have class-compliant MIDI interfaces. They are miracles to me, who used to carry 60 and 80-pound keyboards around, and the idea that you can have an 8-pound, look, I'm carrying a keyboard. That you can have that can hook up to your iPad, and you can work with GarageBand is an enormous amount of power, an enormous amount of opportunities for work. You have such a powerful workstation right there.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony, could you speak a little bit more about that? Because I'm sure, not unlike the people watching with us today, you said GarageBand. Those were like magic words when it comes to composition.
I know, right?
And making learning visible for students, for teachers, for administrators. So can you tell me more about that? How does the keyboard interface with that? And by the way, I love the 6-pound, 8-pound factor, because then that means the students can be responsible for moving those keyboards instead of me.
There's a lot of benefits to 8 pounds. 8 pounds and rounded edges mean that they're going to handle a lot. The GarageBand. So Apple, when they started doing sound, they purchased eMagic. I was a big Logic head way back, and they came out with this program called GarageBand, which is both on the computers and on every phone. I think it's free. I think it's still free. And so you've got basically a digital audio workstation. So GarageBand, not only does it have the ability to do looping, but it has virtual instruments.
Are there any resources or websites or other places that people would recommend, that you would recommend teachers check out, or places that you think the conversation is happening right now that you think would be useful for those folks that are looking at keyboarding in the classroom, or places that you could go or recommend, or even curriculum? It may not be a 6-week curriculum. I know that's oftentimes what it kind of comes down to in schools, but anything that you would highlight or point towards, Anthony, for folks that want to look for more resources?
Alfred's has really nice piano lab program, multiple books, I think adults and for kids,
Okay.
which I really dig. There were some, this is weird because it's acoustic piano, but the Piano Technicians Guild had a bunch of things for group piano, a bunch of games, and you just search Group Piano Guild, Piano Technicians Guild, Group Piano. My father was a piano technician.
Kathleen, any other resources you might recommend?
Well, of course, Music Constructed has all kinds of resources for music educators. I mean, thanks for that wonderful opportunity. But I have to say that, one of the things that is missing on our website is exactly this. How do you, music teachers out there, put pianos and keyboards into your classroom? The experience that I've had, and also the experience that I've talked to when music teachers have asked us what we have, is that there really isn't something. So instead of this being a hurdle, I would invite those of you out there who've had success with this or ideas, it's an opportunity to become a contributor to this community with something that could be used by music teachers across the country and maybe even the world.
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm talking to all of you people out there that are watching the video. Hi. Do write in the comments if there's resources that you're loving, share them with other educators right there in the comments below. Or if you've got questions or issues that you want us to explore a little bit further, go ahead and tag them in there. We're going to be keeping an eye on this stuff, and we want to continue to, like I said, this is kind of the beginning of a dialogue that we want to keep going. So thanks for taking the time with us. And thanks everybody again for joining the call here today, Anthony, Mark, and Kathleen. We really appreciate you taking the time and sharing some of your thoughts, things that are happening out there, as well as some things to consider when bringing keyboarding into the classroom. I guess I'll go back around. Any other final thoughts here? So Anthony, you're unmuted, so I'm going to go to you first.
We just need people to keep playing music. We really, 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 really need that as a society, and your students will have a lifelong learning endeavor.
Well said. Mark. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I sincerely appreciate it. It's people like you, West Music, all of the other great brick and mortar retailers around the country that are just continuing to foster the importance of education, music education. That's really important. Casio has been committed to music education for years now. I've been here for 13 years. In addition to the Keys and Kids programs through VH1, we do Notes for Notes, which we donate product to boys and girls clubs around the country where kids can come in and they can create. But the thing is, we want to make sure and we understand the value and the need really for kids to be exposed to music. It ends up in a more well-rounded human being. That's what we believe. But Ryan and Kathleen, I want to thank you for the time today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Kathleen, bring us home.
I think that a piano to non-musicians is one of the most recognizable instruments and something that indicates music and skill. But as educators, we know the value and the benefit of music goes so far beyond just learning the instrument itself. And so I think the power to leverage the keyboard as that interest and engagement point for the learning that needs to take place, whether it's cooperative or individual or at whatever age, is so important. And I just love how Casio is breaking down the barriers to entry for teachers, for students, and inviting us in to be able to use these instruments that have been known for so long. And whether that's industry specialists like Anthony and Mark, or our business partners like Ryan and West Music, all of us here today are here to support you, the music educator.
Could I just add one last thing to that, which I think is important? We are by no stretch of the imagination experts. The beauty of it is that we learn every day more from the educators So this, for example, this collaboration with Korg to put together this lab, it's one of the more progressive labs. So it made sense to do that, and it benefits the educators. It benefits the kids. So, we're learning from all of the educators. We learn from, the dealers around the country. I'll never profess to be an expert, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for this conversation. Like I said, post some stuff in the comments. Let us know more what else you'd like to hear more from us. And have a wonderful day. Keep going out there making music and hopefully adding some more keyboarding to your classroom.